Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
I'm returning to Clinton Paris, and Tampa's my community.
YT Productions.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy. You gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that SWAC, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee State, just tune into the
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Man, I'm excited. We're debuting our Thursday edition of the show, and you'll see this moving forward as much as possible that we'll be adding a Thursday. And it's a great time, and as we're just all sports galore, including the spring football season, or at least what we thought was going to be. Let me add that. But welcome to episode 107. And the first regular scheduled Thursday edition of Inside HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from NAIA to NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture and HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike is on assignment, but he might be jumping in here. We are filming from our home studio and sending a signal live to KCOH 1230 AM studios with Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas, as we still have an opportunity to do some simulcast, so we'll get that in. So real excited about what's going on there. Like I said, we're going to go inside the numbers today a little more in terms of this show. So we have a surprise. I did want to talk about this. At the end of the show, you'll see me bring on Dr. Langston Clark. He is a alumni of North Carolina A&T, the Aggies out there, but he does his own show in regards to the entrepreneur appetite. He's asked me to come on and guest host with him as we will be interviewing Dr. Derek White, who wrote a book, Gaither, FAMU, and the history of HBCU, or history of Black college football. And so we'll get a chance to interview him. So I wanted to share with you all. So stick around, stay on the page, because we'll have information at the end of the show of how you can get and download and be prepared to jump on over with me onto that show. So just wanted to give you a little inside information in regards to what was going there, and really appreciate everybody that supports us. You called for it. Everybody in the lab said they wanted more labs. So guess what? We decided to give you just more of that. So we got Ricky already in here, two-time of the lab. He says he loves it. Boston Reggie Howes in here. Good evening, gentlemen. CIAA in the house. Anytime Reggie's in the house, you know that. Wendy Jenkins Bishop is supporting us as always. Appreciate Frontline, all the things that she's doing for us with all the colleagues out there. Always special to see her in the house. with that, you all come in here and jump in here. Let's go ahead and get to what we do with the HBCU news of the day. Charles, what do you have for us today?
Sure thing. Well, Dr. Cavil, you touched on it at the very beginning of the broadcast as we take a look at what would have been the opening weekend of SWAC football play as Jackson State and Mississippi Valley. Well, they were the latest to announce today that they will be pausing, or Mississippi Valley, I should say, will be pausing team activities, and the game subsequently was postponed to March 14th. So now we take a look at it in terms of games that will be played this weekend. We only have Southern and Alabama State, which will kick off tomorrow night, which will be the first ever SWAC matchup in the spring, and that will be the only game of the weekend. But so far, this opening weekend of SWAC play, we have the State Fair Classic between Grambling and Prairie that's been postponed because of the weather damage that we had in Dallas. We also have that game was moved to Saturday, March 13th. We also have the opener of Arkansas Pine Bluff and Texas Southern. That game has been delayed because of last week's winter storm. So that game has been rescheduled for Saturday, April 24th. So weather as well as the pandemic wreaking havoc on the opening weekend of SWAC play for football.
Yeah, we thought it would be the case, but I'm not sure we thought it would be this early. As you said, we're getting into it, and we were looking at it in so many different ways in terms of the football games that we're going to be focused on. Obviously, you got Delaware State taking on Delaware outside of MEAC non-conference games they're playing, but then you had the matchups. In terms of Grambling Prairie, we heard a while back after the freeze that game would be postponed to March 13th, as you talked about. But we still look like we're going to have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday matchup. But with the Jackson State Valley cancellation, but you have the Alabama State Southern you talked about, so we can get into that. And obviously the Pine Bluff and Texas Southern cancellation means that you will miss out on some of those games. But that's what's going on there. So very focused in so many different ways in terms of that information. What other news do you have for us besides the cancellation?
Sure thing. Well, beyond the cancellation, we take a look at UCLA. They put 2 HBCUs on their future football schedule. And the 2 HBCUs are North Carolina Central and Alabama State, but this comes to us courtesy from UCLA. They've added games against Alabama State and North Carolina Central to its future football schedule, marking the first time that UCLA will face historically Black college and university. UCLA will host Alabama State September 10th, 2022, and North Carolina Central September 16th, 2023 at the Rose Bowl. So nice look for both HBCUs in terms of playing this Pac-12 opponent in UCLA.
Yeah, first of its kind in terms of that. We here back in the day were a couple of the West Coast teams, most famous USC, coming over here playing in the Deep South at a time that it was not looked upon, or actually was frowned upon. But now you have a HBCU getting a chance to go west. The last time we seen this was back with Southern playing San Francisco in the 40s, playing a historically white college. Then obviously you had Prairie View going out there to play in the NIA championship when they couldn't play in the South. Neither could programs like Tennessee A&I at the time, now Tennessee State, Jackson State, obviously FAMU. So oftentimes they would have to go to the Midwest, or really it was the West Coast for the longest. So you had that semifinal championship game that was played out there in California. But now you see the bright lights. UCLA, Los Angeles should be fascinating. Reminds me to some degree when you had HBCUs going out there playing in the Los Angeles Classic. None other than Prairie View taking on Morehouse one year and Prairie View taking on North Carolina A&T. People were excited about that classic and couldn't quite get the numbers right with the sponsorships and things of that nature. So it didn't work out there. But now you get a chance to play a Power 5 school, UCLA, out of the Pac-12. It's interesting they took one team out of the SWAC and one team out of the MEAC in terms of what's going on there in so many different ways. So that's fascinating. Seems like we got Mike Washington, the other part of the team co-host, join us as he's in his business schedule. As you see, he's outside of the office in his car, but certainly glad to see him in here. We just talking about UCLA putting 2 HBCUs on the schedule. North Carolina Central out of the MEAC. What are your thoughts on those teams going out there to play UCLA? Well, it looks like we can't hear you. You might have to try it without the phone. Check out your phone device, see if you're getting all fancy on us with your earpiece, man. Look at you.
We'll get him back in there eventually. You know,
as he moves
Dr.
around.
Hill, I did want to mention, and this is on a somber note, but HBCU and NFL legend Doug Wilkerson, he passed away. As you well know, Doug Wilkerson, he was an all-CIAA standout at North Carolina Central. He became a first-round draft pick in 1970. He was also a Black College Hall of Fame member. But Doug Wilkerson, he passed away this past week. So I definitely want to send condolences out to the North Carolina Central family.
No doubt about it. Condolences to his family, appropriately done. We'll get Mike back in here and we'll let him talk about some other things. But I also want to look at the Delaware State to end Wesley College athletics from HBCU Gameday. Put that out there. Probably everybody remembers recently, if you hadn't forgotten, now you are reminded that Delaware State actually purchased Wesley College, a private school, as they were shutting down, and brought them into the campus. And oftentimes you see this, Wesley played Division III athletics, and they'll be merging that into the Delaware State program as the counselors. So it'll be interesting to see, will they pick up any sports from Wesley College that they didn't have? You know, what will that look like as they move forward? So I'm fascinated with that announcement that came earlier this week and wanting to share that. Also, SWAC baseball preseason selections in hand. As we talk about some of these spring sports, SWAC East, Alabama State, top vote getter, 14 first place votes, 93 total points. Jackson State right behind them, 76, 3 first place votes. Alcorn State had 52, sitting at projection to be third place. Didn't get any first place votes as Alabama A&M did, and the East had 2, but they were 1 point lower than Alcorn State, so they seeded preseason number 4. Mississippi Valley at the end, 1 first place vote, 28 total points in terms of what's going on there. You had SWAC West, Grambling State, top of the polls, surprised a lot of people prediction. 80 points, 9 first place votes. Usually you see Texas Southern in there. Now Grambling has pushed the envelope before, won a conference championship since those 2 teams were digging it out. But I think that surprised the little people. Changing the coaching at Southern, Texas Southern. Interesting there that only 1 difference in first place votes between Grambling State, and not a lot of points, so it's close. And Southern with 1 first place vote, 64 points. Prairie A&M with 39, they did receive a first place vote, as well as Arkansas Pine Bluff with 35 total points. They received a first place vote. So I thought that was interesting. What are your thoughts on the SWAC East predicted order to finish? Any concerns there in terms of what the coaches and the SIDs voted on in terms of what this looks like? And you're in agreement with that? What you say, Charles?
No, Alabama State, I think, is the class of HBCU baseball. I'm not surprised whatsoever that they would be ranked number 1. Year in, year out, we've seen with Alabama State, they have pitching. And that's one of the things that we can definitely see with some of these early scores, that you got to have some arms. You got to have some arms that can throw strikes over the plate. And Alabama State has been one of those teams that have been consistent in terms of being one of the top teams, not just in SWAC East, but in HBCU baseball. So not surprising whatsoever. So it's going to be incumbent upon those teams, definitely in SWAC East, Jackson State, eventually. When Bethune-Cookman and FAMU come over, that's going to be fun to watch them going up against Alabama State. But you're chasing Alabama State. They are a complete program, and they put the money in that program, as has been pointed out on Black College Nights.
No doubt about it. Lonnie Shaw has jumped in here and joined us. Talking about Thursday special. Yes, love it. That's what we're going to do. So you'll keep and see these coming. You'll keep on supporting that. But great point. What about the SWAC West? What do you think about SWAC West?
SWAC West is going to be fun. I mean, when you take a look at Texas Southern, the question always is, Can Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Grambling get mixed up in there and kind of challenge those two teams? But what we've seen from Texas Southern, they it's like a slow buildup, and all of a sudden they hit their stride as they get to the SWAC tournament. As we've seen over the past few years, Texas Southern has become the team that you really have to watch out for in the SWAC tournament. Southern, they've gotten back on their historic who they are in terms of what they were able to do last year. Surprised everybody last year. They were the SWAC baseball champions from when we last played. I put it that way. But that's the SWAC West is going to be very interesting to watch with Southern and Texas Southern fighting it out again. And we'll see. Can Grambling, can they bring bats to these 3-game series? Over the course of the past few years, we have seen with Grambling, they'll get a sneaker game in there, 1 or 2 in there. They might even win a series, but it sort of peters out as they get to the SWAC tournament. So it'll be, I think, as usual, sort of a fight between Southern and Texas Southern.
Great points, and I like the way that you broke it down in baseball. I think it's going to be fascinating to see what's going on in terms of the spring. Traditionally in baseball, this is before you get the expansion with FAMU and Bethune-Cookman. Baseball gets deeper, but it's already right there. These teams slug it out, East and West divisions. A lot of people thought the West division for the longest is the strongest, but the East division has picked up in a lot of ways and certainly would put an argument in there in terms of what they think. So that's going to be fascinating to going forward in a lot of ways. So I'm curious about that thought. Let's transition a little bit as we get into this component. Let's get into some women basketball. And we're going to talk about the games that were before we transition and get into the matchup, Alabama State and Southern, as we will. We can talk a little bit about what you thought maybe would have happened in those games that are postponed and will be picked up later, which is important versus being canceled at this point. So that's something to think about. But with that being said, we got a barn burner. As with this COVID, you got these games just everywhere, every day, different places.
It's tough to keep up with.
It is a lot to keep up with. It's kind of fun because it's traditionally what you see in the major power conferences in basketball. They play all the time, not traditionally, which is a little different. So we actually had games on Tuesday this week, back-to-back games. In fact, we gave you the scores on Monday with Prairie View and Pine Bluff on the women's side. Prairie View defeated women. That was the only game that night in terms of the Prairie View team. The men did play on Tuesday. The Prairie View women defeated Pine Bluff 70-58, but they had a game on Tuesday. Got you at the end of the show. We gave you a score update as that was a final in overtime with Prairie View beating Pine Bluff 79-71. But you got a barn burner now in overtime with Valley. Prairie View is losing to Valley 59-57. Yep, surprising some people in overtime. 3 seconds left in terms of what I'm seeing on my ticker to give you some updates in that game. So that'll be fascinating. We'll see if we can give you a final during the show. So stick right here. We'll keep you updated on that. But you also had Texas Southern women versus Valley on Tuesday night. That was a 78-66 victory on the women's side. And then on Wednesday, you had SWAC games in terms of women's basketball, which I wanted to jump out there. You had Alabama State overall scoring 81-70. Then you had what some people may have thought was a mild upset, especially with Southern being at home and getting that big victory coming off the weekend when they defeated Alabama State, surprising some people. That changed the direction of the poll ultimately, where Alabama State was the #1 team at the time in the poll. Jackson State is now, for my poll this week, so that's interesting. But Alabama A&M went down there and defeated Southern 78-76. Barn burner there, very close game to give you some indication. So before we jump in and look at maybe some of the men's scores, tell me what your thoughts in terms of the SWAC, in terms of these Tuesday and Thursday games, including, if you want to, that barn burner going down there at Prairie View right now.
Well, the game that really jumped out at me, of course, we saw Southern knock off Alabama State. And I think we talked about a little bit Tuesday in terms of Southern being able to out-rebound Alabama State, something that we just normally haven't seen, at least this past season, because Alabama State, they're tough on the boards. But you come back with Alabama A&M barn burner, 78-76 over Southern. And Alabama A&M with Dariana Lewis and Alexis Evans. Those are two players. They can give you a lot of fits. Dariana Lewis, she's much like Misha Williams at Jackson State, double-double that you can always count on. She had a huge game, 24 points against Southern, 19 rebounds, Dr. Cavil. She had a huge game. And then you had Alexis Evans. She had 18 points and chipped in another 5 rebounds. So not only that, but you have a sort of 3 players who can really get it done for Alabama A&M, and that's going to be interesting. As we're in that back part of February, we're going into the SWAC tournament in another week and a half, 2 weeks here. But if you have these players clicking, they're going to be a very tough out. Dariana Lewis, Nigeria Jones, and Alexis Evans.
Great point when you break it down like that. It's going to be fascinating going down to the wire. Can Jackson State hold on in terms of doing what's necessary? Will anybody do Alabama State a favor? And then you got the seeding for the rest of the teams jockeying back and forth, where it's tight in that middle. Alabama's A&M, Southern, in terms of what's going on there. Can Alcorn State make that move in terms of them playing well lately? Obviously, they had that tough loss. Let's go in terms of what's going on the men's side in terms of that, in that matter. Let's go ahead and take a quick break before we get into the men's side of some of the games that were played between Tuesday and Wednesday. I want to really get your thoughts on these, Charles. I think some fascinating matchups, including a shout out to Lonnie Shaw, as we had the rivalry game yesterday on Wednesday with North Carolina A&T and Central. They play again at the end of this week, switch home court, so it'll be interesting there. But Aggies continue to win and get it done. They got a little payback at the end of last season when Central beat A&T to get the regular season championships. And now A&T, as they leave the conference, will get the Southern Division championship. First one of its kind. And they'll get to put that in the locker room and nobody will be able to take it down because that will be the history books. This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Thursday edition of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
I'm returning Clinton Paris, and Tampa's my community. I grew up here, went to school here, and my wife and I make our home here. What makes Tampa special are its people. So when I represent someone injured in my community, it's personal. Call my office and speak to a real lawyer and not some referral service. I will fight the insurance companies to get the settlement that you deserve. At the law office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being heard.
True Black Essentials is a retail opportunity to bring Black businesses under one roof where every product on every shelf in every aisle will be Black owned and Black produced by people all over the world. Statistics show that the $1.3 trillion of spending power that we have as Black people can easily be turned into each Black person having $2 million if we were to shop Black for 2 years. So True Black Essentials will launch an e-commerce store on November 1st, 2020. But we will open up brick and mortar stores in Atlanta, New Orleans, Charlotte, Houston, and Jacksonville, with the very first store opening in Atlanta, June 19, 2021.
They play, how they play, yeah. We represent that SWAC. That MEAC, and let me say, what's up?
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, as we're doing our Thursday edition of Inside HBCU Sports Lab. We're going inside the numbers, if you would. Now we're going to look at and turn the page to the men's side. We talked about the women before the break, gave you a breakdown. Now we're going to go into the men's side to let you know in terms of Division I teams. Let's start over here where we were. With the Prairie, as they continue to win and get it done. They have now a half-game lead as they go to 8-0, defeating Pine Bluff 72-56, and all they do is win, especially when it's at home. What is that? 32?
Yeah, especially when it's at home, you can pretty much chalk up that L. There's no going down on the hill getting a W right now. Prairie View is just too tough at home. They smother you defensively. They really get after you defensively. That defense creates easy transition buckets for them. And you know, you just can't do anything but be impressed by what Prairie View does basketball-wise. The balance of power has definitively shifted to Prairie View with the another win over Texas Southern last week. So it's definitely Prairie View's world right now. Interestingly enough, two of the hotter teams in the SWAC, Jackson State and Prairie View, they have not seen each other this year.
Yeah, as far as we know, that we'll have to wait to the tournament. That's
might have to wait until the tournament. Exactly.
Matchup, and you talking about all eyes on that game. If that happens, Jackson State, if they're able to play, they have 4 left. You have Prairie View with 4 left. I mean, with 3 left, whatever, but they already a game up. So, I mean, with 4 left, I'm correct, with 4 left. So it's not as if Jackson State can catch them in terms of the number of games played unless some games are made up. So that's going to be fascinating. Remember, it's not just your overall percentage win record. There's also a formula that takes play in here. And I believe Prairie View getting to play that Texas Southern game is really going to end up being helpful, particularly if Prairie View is able to hold on to that win. And that was a critical matchup in so many different ways. And so kudos for Texas Southern for one playing that game.
Yeah,
we'll see what it means. Prairie View wanted to play that game and obviously were able to get it done. And so it's going to be fascinating to kind of look at what's going on here. On the other side, though, man, oh my goodness. Texas Southern 82, Mississippi Valley 45. 40 points at one point in this game. I was just like, what is going on at Valley and Lindsey Hunter? It is tough for skidding, if you will, for the guys down there. And I can't believe it's for a lack of trying. So it's fascinating to see what is going on at Valley. Obviously, Texas Southern is a tough team. And we know playing in Houston is a tough team. And that Texas two-step is no joke. But, man, nearly 40 points.
And I tell you, a player that's really starting to emerge for Texas Southern as a legit scoring threat is Carl Nicholas. He's a guy who gets it done on the offensive and defensive end. He hits the boards real hard. I've called him the Texas Southern Swiss Army knife this year because he dives for loose balls. He gets after it definitively on the defensive end. You know, he'll make a timely assist. He does so much, and he buttresses what Michael Weathers does from the guard position. So they are a formidable 1-2 punch. Gilliam for Texas Southern, he's started scoring a little bit now. You mentioned that seeding part in terms of who gets to see who in the SWAC tournament. That's going to be very interesting. And you're going to not want to see Prairie View or Texas Southern at some point.
As well as Southern, maybe. Southern has made some lineup changes, and now they've won 3 in a row. And that gets me to the game that they played yesterday in terms of the Wednesday matchups, which was Alabama A&M at Southern and Alabama State at Alcorn. Southern got it done 73-57, so they look like they've righted the ship. Similar to what they were able to do last year. They went on that run. They go to Prairie View this year instead of having Prairie View and Texas Southern at home. Will that make a difference? Again, we just told you what happens at Texas two-step, especially talking about the Prairie View part of it right now. It is a challenge to go to the Dome and get a victory there. So it'll be fascinating to see what that means. But it looks like Southern will be up for the challenge. So I'm fascinated with that matchup. But I do want you to talk about Southern defeating Alabama A&M. This is a team that got all 4 in a row in the conference race, right? 2 big non-conference wins and just have fallen on hard times. They went to Prairie View, and Prairie View put it on them. And it seems like, I don't know if they caught something in Texas. I don't know if they drank the water. Obviously, at that time, the pipes hadn't busted, so you would think it was safe drinking water, but maybe it's something that we didn't know about, because it seems like after that Texas road trip, man, they just have not been right, and they can't put it together. So I don't know if they have some injuries that I've been trying to find out and look about it, but played a couple of close games, but they haven't gotten it right, including a loss to their rival in Alabama State, who lost to Alcorn State. Alcorn State, Bussy down there for his first year, he's handling himself well, at least putting himself in a position where it looks like that program is one to keep your eyes on. It's moving in the right direction. Obviously, it's early. You do consider who they're playing, but a win is a win in a lot of ways. So 68-59, Alcorn State over Alabama State, Southern 73-57, Talk about those two matchups, Joe.
Well, the first one was Alcorn. That was a surprising win that they got in. I think over Alabama A&M. Tremaine Crosby. He's a scorer, and Alcorn can be scary in terms of one of those teams you just don't want to see early. And they're starting, like you mentioned, with Landon Bussey, they're starting to get things rolling a little bit down there. Southern and Alabama A&M. That was a tough road trip for Alabama A&M to drop both of those games. They're picking the wrong time to kind of fall on hard times, but Southern, they made a couple of adjustments to the lineup, injected a little bit of energy. Sankila Sile, he had 20 points against Alabama A&M. A huge game for him. They also had a young man, Kirk Parker. He had some big minutes and double-digit rebounds for Southern. So we know how Southern can get, Wesley. We get towards the tournament. They can be a team that you definitively don't want to see. So that was a good 2 wins this past weekend. Bad losses for Alabama A&M.
Yeah, that was tough. That was tough when you see that going down. It's something going on there. It's just a weird thing that you start out so solid. It reminds you of what you saw with Coppin State last year in terms of what took place there. As they started off hot in non-conference and then fell out of order. Talking about Coppin State, let's go into the MEAC team that had some games this past weekend and give you a little update of what that looks like in some ways. I thought it was fascinating when you talk about the fact that Norfolk State guaranteed at least a share of the title for the Northern Division they got it done with their victory over Delaware State, 86-55. We just talked about the Coppin State team. They have 2 games coming up against Delaware State. If they can sweep those, they will tie Norfolk State for the Southern Division championship, but they have the tiebreaker over Norfolk State as they've won 3 out of 4, I should say, 3-1 in terms of those matchups, as Morgan State has defeated Coppin State 3 out of 4 times, and then Norfolk State defeated Morgan State 3 out of 4. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on there in terms of Norfolk State, Delaware State, 86-55. I'm going to go ahead and ask you that matchup and then come back to the Central A&T game. We're going to slot that for some magic in terms of, since that was a rival game. Talk a little bit about what do you see in Norfolk State. They really pounded Delaware State. Delaware State is winless in terms of the conference play this year, struggling a bit in terms of COVID-19 and playing in the pandemic. So we don't know how much of that is the talent on the team or how much is them not just being able to turn the curve, doing all the different things that are going on now. But Norfolk State has the ability to do it, and they've turned it on, and they continue to be what they are. Norfolk State, this is a team we told you coming in to keep your eyes on, and they did not let you down in a lot of ways, even though they struggle at some times. So What are your thoughts in terms of Norfolk State, particularly in this matchup over Delaware State?
Well, the Norfolk State, to me, they go as senior guard Devontae Carter goes. When he's on, they are just a very difficult team to deal with. We saw this past week with Delaware State, 16.5 assists, and he also does so much on the defensive side. He had 6 steals in that game. So, he's one of those guys. We talk about him with here in the SWAC with Michael Weathers, Cam Mack, Tristan Jarrett. They're the straw that stirs the drink for that team. So Devontae Carter, huge game, and when he's on, Norfolk State is a very, very formidable team. And they could be one of those odds-on favorites, to take it all in the MEAC. I really, transitioned to North Carolina A&T and Central. It's going to be fascinating. All these teams, there's very minuscule difference between a Norfolk State and a Morgan State and a Coppin to me, because they can all be knocked off at any point in time. The parity in the MEAC, both in the North and South, is very, very difficult to kind of delineate the teams from each other. They're tough, grimy teams.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how that all adds up when you get into the tournament with some of those matchups, especially when you start looking at the South versus the North. That's going to be fascinating to see. Is FAMU improving as much as it may seem to want people to think, or are they still in that second tier of the MEAC? As they took it to North Carolina, A&T, and although A&T got 3 of the 4 matchups there, 3 of those games, including the one win they got, were really close games.
Right.
Out of those matchups. So it'll be fascinating to see what that looks like. But let's give us into the rival. A&T got that big payback, as they like to say. 79-63 defeating North Carolina Central Eagles. A&T goes to 10-10 overall, 5-1 in terms of conference race. And like I said, they locked down the Southern Division Championship with that win. Webster Fillmore had recorded 12 points and 14 rebounds in that matchup, in that big win over the rival. And Central goes to 4-6 in terms of what they were going. That 79-63 victory was fascinating to see. Again, they play again, so it'll be interesting to see, can A&T close out the regular season in fashion. So I'm fascinated to see what your thoughts in terms of this rival game, one of the best out there, obviously in basketball country, and they live up to it. Coach Mouton, legendary coach, has the series coming out with Chris Paul. So I'm fascinated what he does in that matchup. I got to interview him to give you some backdrops to when they played what I call a really classic matchup. You didn't see teams playing in NCAA in tournament form. They actually played previously in the NAIA District 9 matchup back in the 50s when you had Central defeat Texas Southern, CIAA against the Midwestern Athletic Association at that time, before Texas Southern went into the SWAC. To give you a little bit of history. Yeah, I'm plugging it a little bit. Just think about it. Stay with me. I know that's a lot going on in that big NCAA first round game in Dayton. It was fascinating to see that matchup where Coach Davis got the best of Coach Mouton before Davis left on to go up there as he's at Detroit Mercy now. Fascinating in so different many ways in terms of that game. What are your thoughts in terms of A&T and North Carolina Central?
A little surprising that A&T was able to, more or less coast in this one. They blew out Central, but A&T for all the dominance,
especially in that second half, as you said, they kept it close for half, 37-34.
Right.
But yeah, in that second half, as you talk about, they turned it on, and the Aggies do, it seems like, what the Aggies do.
Yeah, and it's we talk about for all the kind of dominance the Central has had lately. A&T has a winning record against North Carolina Central. This is a game, 4 players in double figures. Cam Langley is Cam Langley. He does what he does, night in, night out. Another huge game for him in terms of 11 points, but he had 9 assists, another 3 steals. One of those straw guys, the stir to drink guys. He's one of those guys. So when he gets all his guys, into the floor of the offense, the Aggies are as dangerous as any team out there.
I want to give a shout out to Michael Jones talking about, what up, guys? Yes, appreciate you, Chuck Hunt. It's strange to see you on Thursday. Yes. Get on it with us. Y'all said y'all wanted the Thursday we give you. So we're going to even tease you a little bit. This is the kind of stuff you get on Thursday. We have to get inside the numbers as we talk about. Check this one out. We're going to give a little love to Hampton. They got a big victory in the Big South as Hampton defeated Longwood 74-68 in terms of that Wednesday matchup to go to 500 in the conference race, which was big for them. 10-13 overall in the regular season at 9-9. Bottom part of the conference in terms of it was dominated by Winthrop in so different ways. The other teams were kind of chunked in the middle. Couldn't get out of their own way in a lot of ways. Can they have that magic that they kind of turned on last year in the tournament? Are they going to be able to do it, or will they even get in the tournament as all the tournaments are changing now in terms of the number of teams they're inviting because of COVID-19? So we'll take a little deeper in that as we got a couple of games still to be played in the Big South to end this week. But let me know your thoughts on Hampton Pirates as Davion Warren scored 20 points as they defeat Longwood 74-68 again in that matchup.
Well, I was curious how many teams are they going to take in the tournament in the Big South? Obviously, Hampton toward the bottom tier. Can they, have enough of a run to push them into the tournament?
To your point, they're sitting at 7th place in the conference in that. So they would have to take at least 8 teams for them to be in. If you're just talking about taking the top 4 or even 6, they're out. They need at least 8 teams, if not all the teams going in the tournament, for them to be able to get in there. They're well ahead of High Point and South Carolina, Upstate, Presbyterian, and Charleston Southern. as the best team, High Point, there sits at 6-11, just 353 winning percentage. They're obviously at 500, along with Garner-Webb, that's also at 500, but is at 10-10, along with Longwood, the team they just beat, that dropped to 10-10 at 500. So you have three teams that are at 500, different amount of games. They're only playing 18. Both the other two teams playing 10. So it'll be interesting. What is the formula? How many are taking in? But just to give you some insight there. Any general thoughts in Hampton in terms of what they were able to do this season? This is going into their third year. Now, you would think that they were thinking that they would get some things done, not to be in terms of.
So the running on the treadmill in the Big South. When you take a look at the top teams in the Big South, you talk about Winthrop, Bradford, Campbell. For Hampton to kind of get into that next tier, if you will, they're going to have to get some consistent wins against those three teams, especially teams like UNC Asheville, things of that nature. They've got to figure out a way to kind of break through, if you will, because thus far they've been kind of running on the treadmill over there in the Big South.
No doubt about it. We'll take a break here. This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Again, this is the first episode of our Thursday edition that we'll do moving forward. So let us know you enjoy it. You said you want it. We're into it. We're going to get you inside the numbers. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about that football matchup. It's a big one. Alabama State and Southern. And we'll see what goes on in the spring as they will get all the sunshine because they'll be the only game out of the SWAC that's able to be played this weekend. It was going to be nice because you're going to have a Friday, Saturday, Sunday matchup, not to be because of cancellations, postponements, I really should say, because those games are expected to be played, but not this weekend. With that, this is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Stick with us because we'll be right back.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
So we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisine.
You gon' learn today how you say they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that SWAC, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee State, tune into the
This is Dr. Bill with Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. The Thursday edition, I should say, the Thursday edition of Inside the Numbers and Inside HBCU Sports Lab. We're going to go inside the numbers with the Southern Alabama State matchup, as we talked about earlier. The Mississippi Valley State at Jackson State game has been postponed. COVID protocols for Mississippi Valley. Prairie, A&M, and Grambling, you've heard by now, that game has also been postponed. That's because of the winter weather that played havoc of the Cotton Bowl, so they pushed that back to March 13th. And then you also have Texas Southern and Arkansas Pine Bluff protocols and weather warnings that they have canceled that matchup. And so we'll move forward. With that, let's get into a good one. Southern and Alabama State, you jump off of it. Not a lot of games in the spring. Everybody wants to know what is the deal with Southern. Alabama State wants to make a statement in terms of them taking the next step. What do you say about this matchup here? It is a West against the East, which is always entertaining as well.
Well, we know the West kind of has had their way with the East, and this game will be a very fun game. I'm looking forward to certain aspects of it. Southern, they can really run the ball with Devon Ben and Jared Sims. They're going to be probably one of the best 1-2 punches, if you will, in the SWAC. They're going up against a formidable defense with a guy like Big Chris Clark. He's first team all SWAC defense. 380 pounds. He anchors the middle. And then you talk about Alabama State secondary with Natron Culpepper. It's hard to throw against them. So this is a great matchup. You take a look at Alabama State from an offensive standpoint. What does Kadarius Davis do? He has a deep ball threat. Michael Jefferson is one of the best, I think, in the league in terms of stretching the field. Can Alabama State generate some offense? But I really like Southern. I really love Dawson Odom in terms of what he's able to do year in, year out. This is a bit of a veteran team with new pieces, especially from a coaching staff perspective. So looking at some of those things, it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that. But Southern always comes prepared. Dawson Odom always has his team ready to rock and roll. And I expect the Jaguars to get the victory on this one.
I'm interested in that you're going with the Jaguars in this matchup. Jaguars have had the number for Alabama State many years. Oftentimes they've slid down there and played in Mobile for a classic, but now they're going into Alabama State. They had that new stadium over there, opening it up. You have Dr. Hill Ely now at the charge, trying to get it done. What are your take me a little bit inside? You talked a little bit about the focus on Southern. What are your thoughts a little more in terms of Alabama State? What should we expect? And what are some of the challenges? What are some of the good points in terms of Alabama State football team?
Defensively, I think they're going to be one of the tougher defenses to go against, I think, in the SWAC. Like I said, Chris Clark, he is a huge run stuffer for Alabama State. And Natron Culpepper, I think, is one of the better defensive backs in the SWAC. One of the things that Dawson Odom's talked about in the SWAC Media Day was Ladarius Skelton. Which Ladarius Skelton do we get? Do we get the dynamic performer Ladarius Skelton? But I think Dawson Odom's mentioned that he has to protect the ball. He has to be able to protect the ball and give Southern opportunities. And that's something that, a lot of Southern fans have been kind of queasy with Skelton in that regards. And that's why you have the other quarterbacks who have gotten quite a bit of time for Southern. So, if Skelton is Skelton, I think Southern is a formidable team out there this spring. And if you really want to take a look at who the favorites are this spring, it would have to be with Alabama A&M in the SWAC East with Aquil Glass, and then Southern in the SWAC West, because I want to see what Grambling is able to do offensively. I know they can run the football, but from a quarterback standpoint, we know the SWAC is a quarterback league, and when you have one, you can do a lot of things.
Do you believe that Southern will actually play multiple quarterbacks in this matchup?
I do. And I think that's one of the things that we kind of have to take a look at, Dr. Gill, in terms of how coaches will approach the spring season. I know they're from a competition standpoint, yes, they're going to be competitive, but I think some of it is still evaluatory. We're still looking at the spring. One of the things that I noticed last week with Jackson State is there were guys who were eligible, to play, but didn't suit up because I think the coaching staff of Jackson State at least was still being evaluatory of some of the roster pieces that they had. So you wonder whether other teams will kind of take that same approach to see what exactly they have up and down the roster. So as to whether we're going to see Skelton the full game, that's a $1 million question. So I'm very interested to see things of that nature.
Can anybody challenge Alabama A&M, since you think they're the class, essentially since Alcorn State said they were not going to participate in the spring? Can anybody do anything against Alabama A&M in the West?
Sure. I think Jackson State and Alabama State definitely have an opportunity to make their bones in this spring session, if you will. I saw some things out of Jackson State last week that I know definitively I have not seen over the past 4 or 5 years. This was a very different team in terms of they were much more disciplined. I've almost gotten desensitized to Jackson State kind of shooting themselves in the foot, especially in the red zone. But there were things that happened last week. When they had a couple of mental lapses, Coach Deion Sanders was getting that player out of there. So it was very noticeable. And one of the things that you kind of gathered from that game, especially talking to fans afterwards, was the team was much more disciplined. Whether they have enough to overcome Alabama A&M, that's a different thing, because Aquil Glass still, I think, is the class of the league in terms of quarterback play. He has 2,000-yard receivers, and he also has a tight end that could be an NFL draft pick as well. So offensively, they're going to be as dangerous as any team out there. The question, of course, with Alabama A&M is, can they stop anyone?
As we bring in our next guest, Dr. Langston Clark, and he's going to talk a little bit about his show, Entrepreneurial Appetite, and the guests that I'll join him with. Quickly go over to the West. You just talked about this matchup, the East-West matchup with Southern, as well as is there anybody that can challenge Southern in the Western Division before we go to Dr. Clark?
Prairie is a team that jumps out at me because they bring so much back defensively. They have, I think, for the first time, 9 defensive starters coming back. So if you're talking about the SWAC West, I think Prairie View is as dangerous as any team. I never count out Grambling. I only question right now the quarterback play in terms of which Jeremy Hickbottom do you get. You get a Jeremy Hickbottom that can be dynamic at times, and then you get a Jeremy Hickbottom that sometimes can be a little loose with the football. So quarterback play, I think, is going to be huge for Grambling. Defensively, they can go heads up with anybody, and we know Grambling is going to play a hard-nosed brand of defense.
Man, you're rubbing it in to Dr. Langston Clark. He's out of the MEAC, or formerly out of MEAC. Now he's headed to the Big South. He's a North Carolina A&T Aggie, big Aggie pride. He represents, I've seen him every year in Atlanta at the Celebration Bowl, because he's right there making sure, and he has had great reasons. Shit, look at that. He held the trophy. I like that. He's in the lab representing, and his team is not playing in the spring, so he has to wait a little longer. But your basketball team just got it done. Big win over FAMU that we talked about a little earlier, guaranteed them the Southern Division Championship in basketball. It'll be interesting when they get in a tournament how they will match up with the Northern teams that been able to get it done. But they get the big win over North Carolina Central Eagles, and I know you're always happy when the Aggies beat the Eagles.
Right. That's right.
Well, we won't test you out today in terms of your sports knowledge, because I know you have that too. But you have a great program that's coming up next. You are the owner of the Entrepreneurial Appetite, and tell us a little bit about what that is.
First of all, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to speak to your audience today. It's a pleasure to be here. Entrepreneurial Appetite is a series of events designed to build community, promote intellectualism, and support Black businesses. And we've had the opportunity to partner with some authors and some alumni associations from historically Black colleges and universities to present their works. And tonight, right after this show, you'll be my guest on there interviewing Dr. Derek E. White, who is the author of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, The History of Black College Football, Florida A&M, and Jake Gaither, which is an outstanding book that provides a context for all HBCU football through the lens and the story of Jake Gaither, who is one of the more, or should be more well-renowned football coaches, Black football coaches, but football coaches in general. So looking forward to having a great discussion there, and hope that you all will be able to join us.
We'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of what are your expectations with this book. As we talked about, this is Dr. Derek White. He's a professor in the academy along with us. He's now at Kentucky, University of Kentucky, but he talks about the Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Jake Gaither, Florida A&M, and the history of Black college football. Masterful book. He's a historian in a lot of ways. It was fascinating as I got into the book, read it several times, and I can't wait to get into some of the questions. I'm going to ask my listeners to come and follow us over there. But one, what about this book grabbed your attention, along with all the other great books that you're doing? And what are your expectations going into this interview?
Well, I think number one, when we talk about Black college football, who's the coach we always go to, right? It's Eddie Robinson. And it was a pleasure for me to learn about Jake Gaither, who in many ways was Eddie Robinson before Eddie Robinson. And it extended for me the long history and tradition of athletic and academic excellence among Black football coaches at historically Black colleges, and I think even beyond historically Black colleges and universities. One of the big takeaways for me was the fact that Jake Gaither was also a Buckeye. And just like he did, I got my master's degree in physical education from The Ohio State University. And it was interesting to me to find out how he was a pioneer in coaching clinics in Florida and probably across the nation. I mean, you had people coming from large Big Ten schools, people coming from historically Black colleges, people coming from high schools to go to his football coaching clinics to learn how to do the game at a higher level in a different way. And I think in a lot of ways, I'm glad you asked that question because I just now thought about this. He probably professionalized coaching football in the Black community.
Yep, great point. I would not argue against that. That's a great point you make there when you talk about it. Well, tell folks how they can jump over and get prepared with this interview as we let you go. I know you got to prepare for it, but how can folks come and follow you? I'll tag you page as well.
So you can go on my Instagram, which is Langston D. Clark, and you can go on the Eventbrite there and you can register and join us. You can also go on LinkedIn. There's an event post there for you to be able to follow. And you can also go to entrepreneurial_appetite on Instagram. And if you click the bio there, you can.
No problem about it. Proud Aggie man here in so many different Aggie Pride. You can go ahead. You can let it out.
I know that's right. Aggie Pride. Aggie Pride. One thing. Listen. One thing I want to say before I go to get started over there is that as I was reading the book, it goes through Jake Gaither's wins and losses, right? And so it was amazing. I'm going to get this number wrong. It like 12 one-loss seasons or 11 or 12 one-loss, which is amazing, right? But a lot of times as I'm reading a book, that one loss came to A&T. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I figured
I just want to put that out
and
there.
that rivalry is still going on today. I was going to make sure you got that in. So you did a good job. You read my mind. We're going to have to bring you more often. You know a little more about your sports than you care to act like you do. Tell them that you got your doctorate where?
Oh, I got my doctorate at the University of Texas at Austin.
You know, they would kill you if you didn't get that in after you got the other.
That's true. But you
for
where my loyalties lie.
It's
always where it begins. Listen, I tell people that I got my PhD from Texas. I got my master's degree from Ohio State, but my birth certificate came from North Carolina A&T. You know, that's the womb that I came through into this world ready to come out and make a difference. And so none of my academic experiences from high school to PhD supersede the experience that I had at A&T. So Aggie Pride.
No doubt about it. Aggie Pride. Go Aggies. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil with the Dean of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington Charles Bishop with our debut of our Thursday edition. Continue to tell everybody, move forward as we continue to make it happen. And you're listening, and I hope you enjoy our primer for Entrepreneurial Appetite with Dr. Langston Clark. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington Charles Bishop. Hop over and join us. This is every Tuesday and Thursday now at 6 o'clock. We look forward to next week, and we will discuss the latest news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, that's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Of course.
Lecture.
Dismissed.